Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 848A, and today's date is December 21st, 2015, and the title of the episode is The Central Bankers Are Now Making the Last Preparations as the Economy Collapses. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. As we approach the end of December, we see at this point holiday sales are not going as planned. We know the central bankers want everyone to believe that this holiday season is doing very well. The economy has improved, unemployment is down, everything is perfectly good. But out in the UK, we are seeing that retail sales, they have grown at a very slow pace. This is completely unexpected in December. And what they're saying right now from the CBI group is that the outlook for January is not strong going forward in 2016, does not look good. And they're saying that the hope for sales next month are at their lowest since May of 2012. So when we look throughout Europe, the UK, Canada, Australia, United States, the holiday season is not bringing in the revenue, not bringing in the sales they thought was going to happen. I mean, it makes kind of sense that all of this is not going the way they thought, because unemployment, GDP, inflation, it's all manipulated. If you're using manipulated calculations, how can you expect what's really going on in the economy to work out? It just can't happen. And if all these companies are continually hiring like the government says, which we take the opposite approach, where Challenger Gray and Christmas is saying no, there are tons and tons of layoffs. We're seeing more and more companies lay off. We would see then office space increasing, right? Because if corporations are hiring like Obama is telling us, we would see retail expanding. We would see sales increasing. We would then see people with more disposable income, people being very comfortable in their jobs, saving the money, going out and shopping, purchasing homes. We're not seeing this at all. And when we look at office space, which is very interesting, it has completely declined since the year 2009. We are in a steady decline of office space. Now, this is kind of strange. And I know people are going to say, well, everyone is telecommuting today. Well, no, they're not. Many of the corporations right now, yes, the corporate media is telling you this, but most of the corporations want the people in the office because they don't trust them to do the work at home if no one's there. Yes, there are a few, but the newly employed people work in the company. And what we're seeing right now is office space is in a complete and utter decline. Now, why is this? Why is everything declining in offices if corporations are hiring? It's because they're not. We've seen thousands upon thousands of people being laid off. And what this means is that they don't need the office space. And this is why we see a lot of corporations getting rid of their offices, because they don't need the space anymore. For example, back in 2013, 2014, going into 2015, the banks like Citibank, Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, all knew the real estate industry was not going to be held together by the people of the United States. They knew they weren't going to be taking out mortgages. They knew this was in decline. So they got rid of the people in their mortgage departments. And it wasn't like 100 or 200. It was in the tens of thousands. So what they did was they reduced their office space. They didn't need as much. I remember prior to 2008 when I was working for a major corporation, the floor that I was on was 3/4 empty because they were preparing and getting ready to get rid of the office space. The same thing is happening right now. Why is this happening? Because the entire system is collapsing. The Fed right now is preparing for this collapse. Now we know the Fed went out and they raised the interest rate, and everyone's clapping their hands, fantastic. As a result of the Fed's balance sheet expanding to $4.5 trillion over the past 7 years, the most direct consequence has been in the increase in excess reserves held at various banks to just over $2.5 trillion. So this means that cash held by various commercial banks has risen proportionately. There has been a direct correlation between the amount of excess reserves in the system and bank cash holdings. A whopping $1.15 trillion remains parked at foreign banks operating in the U.S. So who benefits from all this? Well, because the Fed came out and said they're raising interest rates, we see that the banks are going to benefit from this. Because the banks who continue to park their excess reserves at the Fed collect a 0.5% on the cash. Foreign banks received another $9 billion in cumulative interest payments from the Fed, a grand total which now amounts to just shy of $15 billion. This means that instead of handing over only $6 billion in risk-free interest to foreign banks, these same foreign banks operating on U.S. territory with reserves parked at the Fed will receive a grand total of $11 billion in interest in 2016, closing the year with $26 billion in cumulative interest receipts from the Fed. So banks are being propped up, their balance sheet is being propped up just by raising the Fed fund rate to 0.25%. And we can see right now the Fed has always said, and they looked at the banks, they need more reserve in the banks. And this is what's happening right now. They're getting prepared to bring the system down. And at this point, if they're preparing, you need to prepare. Because as we can see from the economic indicators, this economy is not doing well. Think about the national debt, which is approaching $19 trillion, and that is what they're reporting to the everyday person, but with all the other things thrown into it, it's around 200 or so trillion. And the amount of interest on this debt is about 400 billion per year. And it's so large that it has its own category of government spending. Now, the government spending for this fiscal year will hit $4 trillion for the first time in history. They passed a tax package, which we know, that will cut government tax revenue by $622 billion. That sounds great, but these tax cuts are not going to affect the everyday person or your personal income taxes. Most of them went to corporations. So basically, they're willfully increasing expenses and decreasing revenue. A brilliant move. And just think about how much the government is spending at this point and how much is actually coming in. This system right now cannot be sustained. And as time goes on, as more and more people are getting laid off, more and more people go from that high-paying job to that part-time job, that means there's less revenue coming into the government. Now, Puerto Rico, they're on the verge of collapsing, defaulting on their debt, and we're seeing that Puerto Rico could default before Congress returns from their New Year recess. They need to make up about $957 million of interest payments by January 1st. But don't worry, Puerto Rico is still paying holiday bonuses in the tune of about $120 million. Now, for a Commonwealth that's going to default, maybe they should not be paying bonuses at this point. But we'll wait and see what happens, we know the government is maneuvering and trying to figure out ways and changing the bankruptcy laws to help Puerto Rico. Now, Russia, they have bypassed Saudi Arabia in oil production. Russia took the top spot in May, marking the first time in history that Moscow beat out Saudi Arabia when it comes to crude exports to Beijing. Russia overtook Saudi Arabia for the third time this year in November as China's largest crude oil supplier. China brought in about 949,000 barrels per day of Russian crude in November, compared to only 886,000 from Saudi Arabia. And we can see that China is basically dumping Saudi Arabia and going with Russia and increasing the amount of oil that they're importing from Russia at this point. Because what they're trying to do is completely get off of the private Western Central Bank system. We see Russia's doing this. We see China is doing this. We see the central bank right now is completely preparing for this collapse to occur. They've already given us the signal by raising the interest rates. They're already telling us they're going to be raising it many times this coming year, which we know most likely will not happen. And we can see at this point that they are trying to push war in all different areas to cover up this collapse of the system. And at this point, they are running out of time. We've already gotten a signal that this system is coming down. We already know the economic indicators do not match what the government and the central bank is telling us. What they're doing is they're manipulating everything in the economy just to keep it operational. And many people today realize how this is done. I mean, with our own finances, oh, I won't pay the electric this month because I need the money to pay something else. Oh, I can take out more money on this credit card to pay this, and then I'll worry about that later. And you keep juggling this until you can't juggle it anymore. This is what the government is doing right now. This is what the central bank is doing right now. Yes, they can create money, but eventually what happens, just like credit cards, there comes a point in time where you cannot make the interest payments anymore. You don't have the revenue coming in to support your lifestyle, and things come crashing down. This is where bankruptcy comes in. And we are approaching this point in time. And this is why everyone needs to get prepared and ready. This is not just going to go away. This is going to continue. And it's going to get worse. We're going to see more layoffs. We're going to see retail stores close down. We're going to see the government enact more and more draconian laws. They're going to try to collect more and more taxes from the people. And then when this is all said and done, we will then see bail-ins. And they will come for your currency in the bank, just like we saw in Cyprus, just like they're going to do in Greece, just like we saw in Italy. It's all going to happen. And those people who are ready and prepared will weather the storm. Those people who are not will be running around last minute trying to protect themselves. It's that simple. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.